Welcome to Questions from the Closet. I'm Ben Shalati.
And I'm Charlie Bird. So for a little over a year now, we've been discussing questions we commonly get asked as LGBTQ plus Latter-day Saints.
We don't try to answer these questions or come to a consensus, but simply share our perspectives. Today will be a live Q&A with topics from a selection of questions submitted by the listeners.
So Ben and I are not terribly diverse, and we share many opinions and life experiences. For example, we're both super excited to be kicking off season 2 with this live event.
However, there are some pretty big differences. For example, Charlie wanted to do this and I didn't want to. But then he convinced me to plan the whole thing. So most of what you see is my doing this and mostly recruiting other people to help. So here we are for this.
I showed up 15 minutes late.
That's true.
So as you know, we like to provide a variety of voices and perspectives, and tonight we're joined by Sarah Keller-Langford, who will help us move through the questions as our moderator. So Sarah, it's all yours.
Great. So if you haven't listened to my 2 episodes, I'm not hurt by that, but just in case, go ahead and listen to them. Let me make sure. I think it's episode 25 and 38, so make a note, all right? So my name's Sarah Langford. I've been friends with Ben and Charlie now for a few years, and I'm a bisexual woman. I'm in a mixed orientation marriage. My husband's over there. Hey, Brandon, give a little wave. Right? So cute. And I'm really excited to be here. I think they asked me to do this because they didn't want to pay anyone else. So
we literally couldn't pay anyone, so.
So it was really interesting.
It's like a laugh track.
Oh my
God. Wow.
I mean, record it for the podcast, I guess. It was really interesting looking at all these questions. So first of all, applause for all of you guys for submitting so many. Just over 130 questions were submitted. Pretty impressive. So as you can see, reasonably, I hope that we would not be able to get to all 130 questions. And I've done my best to try to ask questions that covers a lot of these. But if your question isn't answered, we will get to it eventually. The questions that are answered, we're going to post later on the website with the correlating episode that might also be able to help you answer it. It might take some time, but it will be there. So let's get started with a soft one, all right? Ben and Charlie, what have you learned since starting this podcast?
I'll go first because I'm the tallest, but barely. I've learned an awful lot. So I actually brought my journal, but I left it over there, so I'll just quote what it says. But I was going to read an entry from my journal the day that I decided to start this podcast. And my friend Lisa just randomly messaged me and said I should start a podcast. And I was like, I don't want to do that. And I actually went through our messages today to see what we had said back and forth to each other. And I said, maybe I'll consider it. And then I went to church and was hanging out with my friend Deb. And we were passing notes back and forth during church about the podcast. And I just kept thinking about it. It just felt like the right thing to do. And as I read my journal entry from that day, earlier today, one of the things I said was, I just finished the first version of my manuscript for my book, and I thought, so what is the next thing? What is the next thing I can do to build Zion? And I thought, maybe this is it. Maybe this podcast is the next thing. And so one of the things I've really learned is, we build Zion by sharing stories and by getting to know one another's hearts and minds. And I knew that beforehand, but as we've done this podcast, I've just really seen the edification of Zion as we share stories. And the other thing I've really learned is, recently I was giving a fireside at UVU, and someone asked, how we deal with such an uncertain future. And I said something I hadn't said before, which I think is really cool, which I'm going to tell you now, which is when we think about the future and how uncertain it is, that often gives us anxiety, like things could be bad. And what I've learned through this podcast is the future's uncertain, but I get to see how God is going to surprise me. And this podcast is one of the most important things in my life right now. And if my friend Lisa hadn't asked me to do this just over a year and a half ago, I probably wouldn't have done it. And so one of the things I've learned is that God is going to surprise me with beautiful things that I could have never anticipated. And so that's what I've learned.
For me, I feel like I've learned a lot about creating the change that you want to see in the world. And I say that because a few years back, I had maybe told 3 people that I was gay, and I was scouring for resources, and everything I was finding wasn't really resonating with me, and it wasn't what I was looking for. And I remember one time I was driving from Provo to Texas to visit family and then up to Missouri, and I was like, I have 40 hours I'm going to be in a car by myself, and I spent a good chunk of an entire day looking for a podcast that dealt with like faith and sexuality, or even just like being gay in general, and I really just wasn't finding anything. And at that moment, it didn't like even occur to me that like me seeing this here and like what we've created through just Ben's ideas, seeing a need that wasn't filled is mind-blowing to me. And on top of that, what I was looking for before that drive was something to give me hope, something to give me connection, something to give me validation, something to give me something secure. And as I've been blessed to co-host this podcast, I've met so many incredible people that have given me hope. And we try really hard to have a lot of different types of guests with a diversity and range of experiences. And it's so cool to see that all of them are happy and that there's happiness down all these paths. We've interviewed people in same-sex relationships and they're happy. And we've interviewed people who are single and they're happy. And we've interviewed people in mixed orientation marriages and they are happy. And it's just so cool to see that when you're authentically yourself and living according to your own values in a way that like is faith-filled and connecting with God, you can find happiness. And it's been so necessary for me, and I'm just so humbled that we can share a piece of that with others.
Thank you, Ben and Charlie. Really appreciate that.
Thank you for the great question.
Oh my goodness, you guys. So I think it's fair to say that even though you're very clear about the fact that neither one of you are experts or all-encompassing about these experiences at the intersection of faith, sexuality, and gender identity, that a lot of people look to you as relative experts, or at least, important people that know a lot of stuff, okay? So what have you learned? Have your opinions changed at all since the beginning? Has it shifted?
Yeah, so this is actually the hardest part of being public and sharing my story for me, is people thinking that their story should be like mine. That is really the hardest part. And I don't so much worry about that with the LGBTQ folks who are members of the church, because when I started my support group in Tucson, my goal was to get everyone to stay in the church, and almost no one did in that support group. But I did, and I thought, I can say stay, I can say be like me, but they're not going to do it anyway. People are going to be who they are no matter what. And so I share my story. I invite people to share theirs. And so I'm not so worried about people trying to think that they should be like me, because I don't really see that happening a ton. And I also am just so explicit about that. My big fear is for the straight people who hear my story, that they are going to think that my story can be someone else's story. And that's just not the case. And I say that a ton, like again and again and again and again. And I don't think I can ever say it enough, because people are still going to say that. And I remember a good friend of mine, I probably mentioned this before, but his mom said to me, well, he told me that his mom said to him that I am everything that she wishes her son could be. And that is just so painful. Like, that is just so painful, that people wishing their kids could be like me. And I don't want that. So that's my big hesitation in sharing my story. And as explicit as I am, this is my story. People are going to do that, and I really try hard not to. But I don't feel like that means I shouldn't share my story. I think my story is still valid and worth sharing. I just hope that we all can have enough humility and openness to talk to the people in our lives, and not just some public figure like me.
And what a public figure you are, Ben. So, by the way, me and Ben are not dating.
He wishes.
Yeah, I do. We get a lot of questions. I bet maybe 30 of the questions were if we're dating.
Absolutely, there were.
Just on the down low. So I feel like one of the things I've learned a lot about myself. And maybe that sounds selfish, but it's been really cool to look at my past through like a more mature adult lens and find themes in the way I develop and learn about Christ in ways that I get tripped up. And as I talk to so many different people, I can see how my path has gotten me to where I am. And I've been able to kind of like do better at trial and error, I think, because I'm not where I'm going to be. And that's something that, well, first of all, when I allowed myself to realize that I'm like on a journey and I can make choices and I can change my mind and just move wherever I want and trust God, that opened up so many possibilities to me. And I feel much more healthy doing that. But I think the coolest thing is just, like I said, talking to all of these incredible people, these guests, and I've learned what the word pansexual means, and I've learned what it's like for someone to be asexual, and I've learned how I can be a better transgender ally, and I've learned about all of these like little, they're not little, they're important, but to me, they weren't at the forefront of being LGBTQ plus because I'm the G, and that's what's always right there in front of me. Like, how am I going to live as a gay man in this society, in this church, in this city? But by looking to other people and their experiences, there's so many similarities and symmetries that I can glean from, but at the same time, it shifts my attitudes, my actions, my words in a way that I hope can make more space for other people, and that's been really nice.
And just one thing I want to add, as longtime listeners might know, I answer the emails, and so I get all the feedback on the episodes. And as hard much as we try to be educated and do things right, we make a lot of mistakes. And then people email us and tell us those mistakes, and then I read them. And it has been really good for me. So we did an episode called "Should I Stay Single and Celibate?" And I said something like, "I'm not a robot. I'm a human being. Like, of course I want to be in a relationship with someone." And then someone emailed us and said, "I identify as asexual and aromantic. I'm a human, and I do not want to be in a relationship." And I was like, "Oh my gosh! Like I missed that. This thing that I didn't see." And there are a lot of experiences that I don't see because they're not my experiences. And I try and be humble and listen, but I just do that so imperfectly. And that's the thing I want to do better. I want to be better at hearing people's experiences. They're outside of my own, and just listening to them and trusting them. And I have a lot more learning to do, honestly.
Thank you, Ben and Charlie. I think it's fair to say that you both are pretty open about the fact that you are growing and continuing to grow. And I think that it's an open secret that public discourse is at times not always very understanding of people growing. So how do you think we as a community can do a better job of holding people accountable while also giving space for people to learn and to grow and to change?
Well, Charlie just had an experience where he was pretty canceled. That I think would be good for you to talk about. But I think one of the things we can do is offer people grace. So I just spent an amazing weekend in Sacramento with some great people. I went on a youth trek there. It was super, super fun. And as I was talking to the people who invited me, they would say well, what about someone saying this thing? Or what about if this happens at church? And I said something like, well, is that something you would have said 4 years ago? And the truth is that some of the things that make me mad, some things that hurt me, some things that feel toxic are things that I myself have said. And so I try and offer people grace and time to grow. So if someone says something that they shouldn't say or that is painful or hurtful, I try and look at their intentions, and most people's intentions are good. And so instead of just getting someone out of my life or saying they're canceled now, I want to give them grace and time to grow. And there are some people who don't want to grow, who don't want to listen, and that's their choice, and maybe that relationship isn't going to be a healthy relationship for me to stay in. But I want to give those people that I care about time to grow, just like I've had time to grow.
Thank you, Ben.
Yeah, I feel like connection can sometimes be the best form of correction. Mm-hmm. And just for me, so much of it comes down to proximity. And that what Ben was talking about, it was interesting because I didn't first see, I posted something on Instagram that a lot of people took to mean something I didn't intend for it to be. And I felt like it was important to say, but I was getting attacked on all sides, and it was really interesting because people were accusing me of not bringing up certain issues or excusing things or acting a certain way. And I was like, I talk about that a lot. They're like, you never talk about the hurtful things in church history. And I was like, I wrote half of my book is about that. And the theme is that. Or, I don't know, it was just interesting to me. And they were like, I don't know, they're like, it's so dangerous to promote being single and celibate. And I was like, we did a podcast on that where I said that, So it was just interesting to me that people can take one chunk and internalize it a certain way and then make blanket assumptions. And I think in any polarizing environment, which sexuality and religion is super polarizing, there are pretty defined sides that I'm trying to break out of because I don't belong to either. And so when people try to pull me to their side, it makes, I feel like they don't see me as a person. And that if they could get to know me and have a discussion, that if I do need to be corrected, then I want to, I want to do better. But when it comes in a like you are this way and you're bad, that's just not helpful. I don't know if that helps. That hurt my feelings. I'm still not over it. Thanks for bringing it up, Ben.
Yeah, and this is a story I mentioned in my book and in my TEDx talk, so I apologize if you already heard this story, but I love my brother Jessen. He's amazing. But when I told him that I had kissed a man, like his response was like to shudder and say like yeah, I know, right? And the thing I said in my TED talk, which I super believe, is like I didn't care how he responded. I just cared that we were having the conversation. And now years later, like he would have a much different response. And I could have said, "How dare you respond that way?" and then been like, "I'm not going home. I'm not seeing my brother anymore." But what a shame that would have been for our family. But it took both of us, me being willing to share and him being like having the humility to listen and understand me, that really brought us closer together and brought understanding for both of us. And then my brother, he works at a middle school. Then he started a pride club at his middle school. And when he told me about that, he said, "I did this because I don't want anyone to have to feel as alone as you did." And so this is what happens when we're patient. When we take time to listen and teach people, it just ripples out into more goodness. And if we just cancel people and say, "You're bad, you're toxic," then those ripples are going to stop with us.
Thank you, Ben. Yeah, that's a round of applause. That's the last round of applause that I'll allow you for this, just because, we want to be like...
Oh, no, I like it.
No.
It feels great, guys.
Maybe wave your hands. I don't know, we'll play it by ear, okay? So I'm just curious then, clearly you guys have strong opinions and experiences that have allowed you to be empathetic to yourself, especially to others as they're continuing to learn and to grow. One of the questions on here from Adam S. My brother came out to me 2 years ago and I did not react the way that I wanted to. I've learned a lot, but I don't know how else I can say that I'm sorry. He just won't talk to me. What do I do?
Well, this is what I always say when people ask questions. I don't know what you should do because I don't know your relationship. And so it really depends on your personal relationship. When I think of who I want who I would want in a future spouse and in a partner, of course, all those normal things like rapport, someone I'm attracted to. But aside from all the normal things, the characteristic that matters to me the most is someone who's forgiving. Because I make a lot of mistakes. And I don't know what your relationship is like with your brother, and he might not be in a place where he's ready to receive an apology. But I would say keep reaching out, keep apologizing. Whenever I talk to someone who has come out to a family member and they don't respond well, I always say that's not the last conversation. Like you're going to have more conversations. And so he might be in a place where he's not ready to talk or forgive now, and that's okay. The relationships last a long time, and it's okay to be patient and to wait for those wounds to heal. But I think an apology and multiple apologies can always be warranted if you did the wrong thing.
Thank you, Ben. Do you want to say something, Charlie? Okay, great. So I think that that's an important thing. Let's give grace, let's give empathy. And then there are situations where the person Adam's brother, maybe he's listening, maybe he's not, he is justifiably angry. It's okay that he's angry. It's okay that he's upset about the fact that his brother wasn't understanding. But someone who's mid-anger, this is a question, anonymous. How can I let go of anger towards the church? I want to, but I just don't know how. How have either of you handled this? Easy question.
Yeah. So part of me when I hear that is, it almost sounds like this person's under the impression that I'm not angry. And I'm angry every day. Every time there's a misconception or a way that I feel marginalized or see a friend being marginalized or hurt, I'm angry. I'm angry all the time. And I guess the way I try to work through that is to allow myself to feel multiple emotions at the same time, even if I feel like they should be contradictory. And as I open up a space for me to feel anger and also hope and devotion and accountability and forgiveness all at the same time, I feel like it expands my heart and allows that anger not to become who I am, but be a driving force for me to work through doubt and push for positive change. And so I really feel like it's okay to be angry, and there's so many reasons that you should be. But that doesn't mean that you have to close yourself off from goodness and let. I feel like that anger can be an inspiration and a catalyst for beauty.
I just want to echo what Charlie said, that, I get angry a lot. Really terrible things happen. And it's not like I just brush off and say, oh, all is well in Zion, yea, Zion prospereth. In fact, if we say that according to Nephi, we are being carefully led down to hell. So let's not think all is well in Zion, because it's not. And if you ever go to therapy, that you'll often be told that anger is a secondary emotion, that there's something else you're feeling, whether it be pain, isolation, rejection. So just like Charlie, I try and allow myself to feel those feelings. And I'm honest with myself, and I talk to people that I care about and about how I actually feel, and that has been really helpful for me when something painful and hurtful happens. So when we talked at the beginning about how this podcast started, so I just finished my book, which I felt prompted to do, and I felt prompted to do this podcast, and then the podcast came out, and I was like, okay, what is the next thing? Like, I did these two things, I felt prompted to do, what is the next thing? And the shutdown had just happened. I ended up spending 3 weeks in Arizona with my friends Kevin and Allison. And while I was there, I just was thinking about some things that had just happened at BYU before the shutdown. There was this race and immigration panel where some really racist comments were made. And then the whole change in the honor code that was really painful for a lot of people. And I met with a lot of students about both of those incidences, and just saw the pain. And I talked to some of the people who were uncomfortable that there were even gay students on campus. And I was like, well, I am gay, and they were shocked that was even possible. But I had this really beautiful conversation with a student who was like, why are there homosexuals at the Lord's University? And we had this beautiful, but we had this really beautiful conversation. And when he left, I think we both felt super good. And so I was reflecting all this when I was in Arizona, and I thought, I don't think any of this is happening because people have malice. I think they mean to hate people of other races. I don't think they mean to hate LGBTQ people. They just don't know. And I think a little education will change the world here. And I thought, well, I have a PhD, maybe I'll just teach a diversity class. And so during shutdown, I made a proposal and wrote this diversity class that somehow got approved, and I've been teaching for 2 semesters, and I'm going to teach in the fall as well. And then once I did that, I was like, okay, now what is the next thing? And so now I'm working on another project that maybe I'll talk about in the future if it ever ends up happening. So the reason I share this is when painful things happen, I think, how can I create the world I want to live in? Like, what can I do to create the world that I want to live in? And then I put all my energy into that. And one of the prayers I pray the most often, I say, Heavenly Father, I want to do all I can in my sphere of influence to make the world a better place. And if you want me to have a bigger sphere of influence, that's on you. And I do say that, but in more prayerful language, of course. But when tough things happen, that's kind of my response. I let myself feel the feelings. I talk to people I care about how I'm feeling, and then I say, okay, what can I do to make the world better? How can I turn my energy into something productive?
Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Charlie. I want to repeat the question back to you that I think whoever it was that asked you that. Why does the Lord allow homosexuals at BYU?
Because God lets all of his children attend BYU. No, I'm just kidding. Like God has anything to do with who gets into BYU. So I was on this panel at BYU back in January of 2020, and one of the people on the panel was Liz Darger, who's the Senior Associate Director of Athletics, I believe is her title. And she was asked a question similar to this, like should LGBTQ students attend BYU? And she said, where else would we want them to be? Amen. And so we just need to do a better job of creating a space where people feel comfortable. Not long ago, I was in a class, and I was part of a diversity panel, and there was a woman of color, a man of color, and me on the panel. And one of the questions that was asked was, how can we create more diversity at BYU? And they talked about recruitment and things like that, and elevating people's voices. And then it was my turn. I said, well, we don't need to create more LGBTQ diversity at BYU. It's already here. Like, we already have the diversity. We just don't know about it. And so we need to create an environment where people feel comfortable and confident enough for them to share their stories and be open about who they are. And one of the best things that like some of the best feedback we get on the podcast is when someone comes up to me and they say, I'm at BYU and I listen to your podcast and you helped me have the courage to come out. I know that's not the right thing for everybody, but if there's something that you want to do and we can just give you a little bit of courage to help you do that thing that you want to do, like that is a win.
Thank you. Great answer. So this is a little bit of a pivot, and we've talked a little bit about this personally, and I know you've touched on it in your podcast, but I think it's an important one. How do you deal with the high image standards unofficially pushed by the gay community?
We meet them.
I'm assuming that's body image. I have some thoughts on this, and I can only speak from my perspective as a cisgender gay man, and I think one of I don't know how problematic it is, but in a same-sex couple, I feel like there's a lot of comparisons that can be made, right? Like, you're taller, you're shorter, you have bigger arms, you have more hair. Like, there's a bunch of different ways that we can talk about bodies and compare bodies. And I also think that one of the reasons that body image is a huge issue, especially for gay men, is the way that sexuality is so sexualized. We don't talk about it as if it's orientation, like spiritual and emotional and companionship connection. It's only viewed through a sexual lens. On top of that, there's a lot of people's first exposure when they're gay to any type of relationship or sexuality is through pornography, because they're trying to hide things and they can't go on a date and meet someone. So there's a lot of ways that bodies become very important very quickly. And I think just one of the things that I learned from dating was that orientation isn't just sexuality, and just being attracted to someone physically doesn't necessarily equate love at all. And so there's a lot of different ways to be a beautiful person and be loved. So I guess I'm just assuming that question's coming from I'm worried to find love. But on top of that, I think everyone struggles with body image issues because of the images that we're fed all the time. So for me, and honestly, I used to be so wrapped up in that, because I am sensitive to that. And if you scroll down in my Instagram, I think I've archived most of it, I hope so. But I used to post thirst traps and try to be sexy and spend a lot of time at the gym. And sometimes I feel guilty that I'm not doing that right now, because I'm I'm writing and doing the podcast and I don't have time. And I'm maybe I won't be enough. Maybe I can't be the coolest, most attractive guy. And I'm I don't know, I just don't have to be. And so as I filter out different social media accounts, I can unfollow people who make me feel bad about myself, and just put myself in a position where I can see myself for my spirit, and just recognize that this body is a vehicle for me to do good and have a spirit. And I don't know, is that helpful, Ben? Do you have any thoughts other than that you are the male image standard?
I am not. That was a joke. But I think I'm the wrong person to ask this. I don't have a lot of body image issues. So there are probably better people to ask this question to than me. On my mom's side of the family, people are just naturally tall and thin and broad-shouldered. So I just naturally am tall and thin with broad shoulders. That's just how I was born. So it's not anything I did. But when I was always pretty skinny, I was kind of scrawny. And then when I moved to Arizona, at the University of Arizona, there was this mandatory rec center fee we had to pay. It was hundreds of dollars every semester. And I tried to get them to take away the fee because I wasn't going to use it, and they wouldn't. And I was like, well, I'm going to show them. So I started working out of spite. And so I made a goal that I'd work out 0 to 4 times a week, and that is still my goal. So every week I make my goal, and it's been really fun. I have 30 pounds of muscle more than I used to have, and when I got to Arizona, and it's been fun. It's also been a lot of work, but it's something that happened out of spite, and now I just do it because I enjoy it. So I don't know what I'm saying, where I'm going with this, but I guess if there's something about you that you don't like, love yourself, and also if there's something that you could do better, Don't hesitate to try something new, out of spite.
I think the key takeaway, Ben, was that we all heard that you have 30 more pounds of muscle. Like,
Probably like 25. I've got a little chub now too.
oh, whatever. Speaking of image, this question is from Kristen. Charlie, your hair always looks so good. What do you use to keep it looking good?
It was Kristen. Okay, first of all, Kristen, you gotta have like wavy or curly hair if you want the curls to pop, right? You can't be starting with like straight hair. Straight hair can be beautiful, but so can curls, and I'm gonna tell you how. The first thing you do, you can't brush, you can't finger comb, you gotta scrunch. So it starts when it's wet. If you're in the shower, you put your hair in the sink, whatever, you gotta scrunch it, okay? We want those curls to start getting defined. Then when you dry it off, are we rubbing our hair like that, Kristen? No. No, we're not. It's gonna get frizzy, you're gonna be looking a mess. You scrunch. So I scrunch the towel. And then I just use like a curl cream. I've talked to a lot of different people with curly hair. You can kind of like get recommendations. I use the cheapest curl cream from Walmart. It's like $6. It's called Heritage. Heritage, yeah, that's what it is. And then I just put that in, I put a little gel in. Now, this is the key. Now you gotta wait. You wait until it gets all shiny and crusty, and then you break the gel. So you just, again, it's just a scrunch. It's really all the scrunch. And so sometimes I'll put, like tonight, I spent a lot of time on my hair. I didn't wait because I didn't have time, so I used a hair dryer with a diffuser.
Nice.
So I like dried my hair with the hair dryer, and then I put a little bit of argan oil on my hands and then scrunched it there, and it just really makes the curls pop. So.
This is a really important note. Like, Charlie was not paid to promote any hair products during his telling.
I feel like I kind of want to do like a tutorial on Instagram now.
I would watch that.
But that means I'd have to clean my bathroom, so maybe I'll not do it.
Who else would watch Charlie doing a hair tutorial? All right, okay. So I really, really like this question. Most of the time, I think I am straight. But then I see women like Zendaya and Emma Watson, and then I'm like, damn, maybe not. Is this normal, or am I not straight? Ha.
Well, most of the time I think I'm gay, but then I see women like Zendaya and Emma Watson, and I'm like... So those are my thoughts.
So this is how I do my hair. I'm kidding. That's a good question. And when I see Zendaya and Emma Watson, I don't think that. So I don't know what that experience is like.
Gayer than me?
I might be gayer than Charlie. Solid Kinsey 6. So, if you're not sure, I mean, the way I knew for sure that I was gay was I dated women, and I kissed them, and it just didn't feel natural. It felt kind of yucky. And I would hold their hands, and it felt really uncomfortable. And I would date them because I was supposed to. I remember actually dating this girl, and we agreed that we liked each other, and we're gonna date, and I was like, now what do we do? Like, it just didn't make sense to me. And so for someone who's thinking about their orientation, I don't know, maybe you might be a little bi. I don't know, but it's not, I think it's perfectly normal to see someone who is incredibly attractive that you might not normally be attracted to and to be attracted to them.
Yeah, and if you're a little bi, that's awesome. Like, cool, we love it,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Now I'm just thinking about Emma Watson's glow up in the third Harry Potter movie. And we should really just move on.
Yeah.
Especially because she was 14. But I was also 12. So.
It's okay if you're a lot bi too, though, right? Not just a little bi?
You can
Okay.
be a little bi, a lot bi, super bi.
Okay.
Yeah.
Super bi.
Yeah. No more comments. We can move on.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, the important thing is if you think Zendaya and Emma Watson are hot, don't freak out. It's normal. And if you don't, it's also normal. just like enjoy the experience, whatever it is.
Like,
Right?
like when I see Emma Watson or from my generation, Anne Hathaway, I'm like, that is a very attractive woman. I don't want to kiss her or hold her hand, but she is very nice to look at.
So I want to know, like, who else do you guys think is nice to look at?
Like the lady celebrities.
Say me, Ben. Say me.
Charlie Bird.
I mean, we can like do both. Like, I mean, just in general, people. Like, who do you think are nice?
Who's hot?
Yeah, who's hot? Who are your celebrity crushes specifically?
Well, you know, most of the Chris's. You know, a Chris Pine, a Chris Evans, a Chris Pratt. I mean, who doesn't love a good Chris? A Jeff Goldblum in Jurassic Park. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
I'm done now.
So I was always very into Jake Gyllenhaal.
Oh.
And I've never even seen Brokeback Mountain. It's just like, just seeing Jake on like the red carpet and stuff. I also really,
Spider-Man Far From Home. He was the best part.
I've never seen it.
It's worth watching.
Is it horrible to say I don't really like Spider-Man? I mean, canceled. I'm gonna get canceled. Let's see, Zayn from One Direction. Back in the day, I was like, ooh, that hair is perfectly coiffed. I liked Maluma for a while. He's a singer from Colombia. Speaking of Colombia, like girl-wise, Shakira is everything. Beyonce is queen, and Taylor Swift is like, oh, I wish I was her.
So we have some former guests here from the podcast, and I was talking to Charlie before, and I was like, they are all so attractive, like not a dud in the bunch. And I'm very sorry that the podcast is just audio because we have very attractive guests. So.
Yeah, I'm thinking about them now. I got distracted.
Sarah, who do you find attractive?
You really want to know?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, oh yeah, Corinne Priest, like right up there in the front. But obviously, my number one, where's Brandon? Like goes without saying. But celebrity, Brandon, like Benedict Cumberbatch. I know, guys. I know. I don't understand it either. Okay?
Sarah likes a smart man.
But there's like a visceral reaction when he starts talking, and like he did this. He narrated this animal like kingdom kind of thing, and I was just. He wasn't even on the screen. Okay.
And the lion bit the gazelle.
Attraction is multifaceted, okay? It's a spectrum, and Benedict Cumberbatch and my attraction for him is like my confirmation of that, okay? And just like women, like Ruby Rose does it for me, and there's a list. But we'll talk about that later. So we're gonna like bring this back a little bit, and this is a really good question from Andre. So what do you consider has been the most important learning regarding to same-sex attraction in your life? I was just reading that verbatim. So what has been the most important thing that you've learned about your sexuality?
Yeah. You know, whenever we ask like a hyperbole question, like the most thing or the most important thing, it's always kind of hard to answer. So I'll just share a couple of things that I've really learned along the way. I've learned that I came to this earth in a specific way. And I tried to change how I came an awful lot. And I tried to change this in a number of ways. And one of the things I've learned about same-sex attraction is this isn't something that I was meant to change. You know, I can say a prayer about something frivolous, like, hey, I'm kind of lonely, I want to have a friend today. Then someone will call right away. Like, God answers my prayers in really miraculous ways. And so one of the things I've learned is that as much as I wanted and tried to change my orientation isn't something that God wanted to change. And so once I realized that and stopped trying to change who I was and tried to be the best me, how I was, then I really started to thrive. And so I guess one of the most important things that I've learned is that I was created for a purpose, and now it's up to me to live my best life the way I was created.
So Ben stole my answer.
You scrunch.
I'm just thinking about, like, piggybacking off of that, the way that who I am has, like, forced me to look at me and my relationship with God and, like, really teach me about who Jesus Christ is. I think it's so easy to, like, seeing I am a child of God and primary and be like, yeah, Jesus knows me personally, but, like, I had to come to, like, a rock bottom situation where like Christ had to know me personally, and I fully believe that he does. He knows exactly what it means to be me as I am on every step of this journey, and because of that he can like guide me. And when I realized that, I stopped being afraid of myself, and I stopped being afraid of all the ways I could fail, because for so long I was just debilitated by choice, and I felt backed into a corner, and it was either like it was like be gay or be religious, like, and it was a corner that I hated and stressed me out and kept me up all night. And I felt like, well, just to ramble a little bit, I remember watching a story on like the Mormon and Gay website forever ago, and someone had like left, they dated for a few years, and then they'd like come back to the church. And I was like, I wish I could do that. Like, I can't believe they get to go date and have all the fun, and I'm just gonna like be lonely forever. And I really felt like I couldn't make a choice. I couldn't do anything, and I just had to like live in my like strict, narrow mindset. But when I realized that Christ atoned for us to teach us and allow us to repent, the gift of agency became so clear, and I wasn't afraid to try new things and make mistakes and just constantly reassess where I was and where I was headed and if I liked that direction. And honestly, like, who knows what any of our lives are going to look like, but I feel so confident that if I'm prayerful and like deliberate about the way I move forward, and just trust that if I'm like getting to a bad place, I can get back, or if I'm being led down a place that I thought was scary and I thought was bad but is actually feeling right, then I can do that, and I'm going to be okay.
Just a couple more thoughts, because I know you want to hear more from me about this. I hit rock bottom when I was 30. You know, I just didn't think I could be happy in the church. I didn't think I could be happy gay. I just, like, there was no way forward. I was like, life was over. And I just wasn't sure how I could move forward. And I was at my parents' house for like a month on break from my PhD program. And I was like done with the church. I was like, I'm out of here. Like, this is just not working. But I decided I wasn't going to give up on God. And so I kept reading my scriptures, and like I gave up on the church over like a 2-day period. Like, it didn't last that long. But I remember reading in Matthew 26, and this is a story I share in my book. But I didn't notice that in Matthew 26, when Christ is in the Garden of Gethsemane, he says that prayer, Father, if thou be willing, let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not my will, but thine be done. And the thing I hadn't noticed before is he made that same prayer 3 times. 3 times he said, is there another way? Because I don't want to do this. And then it occurred to me, it's not un-Christ-like. It's a Christ-like thing to not want to do something hard. And if the Savior didn't want to do something hard, it's okay for me to not want to do something hard. But then it's up to me to say, okay, Father, now what cup are you offering me? Like, what do you want me to drink? And that became my prayer. My prayer wasn't how do I move forward, but like, God, like, what are you offering to me? Like, what are you offering me in this life? And as I did that, life started to get a lot brighter, and I started to find, and like these little pinpricks of light started showing up in my life, and I started to be able to move forward in a way that really got me to a thriving place. But it was hard work, and that's one of the things I've really learned from my sexual orientation, is that it's a really normal thing to not want to have the situation that you've been given, to not want to play the cards you've been dealt. But it's a Christ-like thing to figure out what God wants you to do in that situation. And the last thing I'm going to mention is I'm one of the most privileged people on the planet. Like, I'm a tall, white, English-speaking, educated male with hair. And the only way I'm not privileged is with my sexual orientation. That's something that I can hide if I need to. And just being a little bit of a minority has really helped me to have a lot more compassion. Not as much compassion as I probably should have or need to have, but it's given me a lot more compassion for people who feel different and marginalized, which, as I've learned, it tends to be most people at some point. And I've just learned so much about so many people. As I've opened up, they've opened up, and I've just learned all kinds of things. That's been a real gift.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Charlie. We kind of touched on this at the beginning, that there are a lot of people that assume a lot of things about the both of you. They assign a lot of nefariousness or maliciousness or just general ignorance. And as you said, I mean, you've written books, you've podcasts. These people that have, I don't know, a problem with you, maybe we'll label them your haters, like, what do you wish that they knew that they don't seem to know about you?
I just, my story is everywhere. Like, you can read my blog, you can listen to the podcast, you can read my books, you can see my TED Talks, you can come talk to me personally. Like, my story is not hidden. Like, it is very easy to know me if you want to know me. And so I just wish people would get to know me. And there's this song that's from Steven Universe. I haven't even seen it, the show. But there's a song that I don't need you to love me, I love me. I don't, how's it go? I need you to love me, I love me. I don't need you to accept me, I accept me. But I want you to know, if you could know me, you'd change your mind. Something like that, I'm paraphrasing. But, I think that if people really got to know me, they'd love me. Because there's not a person that I've really gotten to know that I don't love. Like, there's no unlovable person. And even the person who seems like the most boring or the most mean, when you really get to know them, like, they are awesome. Like, everyone is worth loving. And it's like C.S. Lewis said, you won't look into the eyes of someone that God doesn't love. And as I've gotten to know more people, I've noticed that and really seen that. And I have these BYU students come by my office all the time. More often than not, I'm the first person they come out to. That's happened at least a dozen times in my office. I'm the first person that they share their orientation with. And it's such a sacred experience for me to have this stranger come in and trust me with this information. And I have tried to share my life with other people, and I really think that if they really got to know me, that they would love me. And the other thing is, I try really hard to be humble. I love attention. Like, I'm just a naturally prideful person who loves attention and praise. And I've just been like so intentional about how I share my story and how we do this podcast, so that I'm doing it for the right reasons, to quote The Bachelor and The Bachelorette. To just like really do this for the right reasons, like to make sure that it's not about me, it's not about Charlie, it's about education and elevating other people's stories. And so I just hope that they could see that, like, my heart is in the right place. And if I'm doing something wrong, if I'm hurting people, like, I want to know that, I want to do it better.
Thank you, Ben. Charlie?
Everything Ben said resonates with me almost 100%. I find it so interesting. Like, I guess I would want them to know that I'm not like invincible. I'm not some sort of like bulletproof shield, and I get feedback a lot from a lot of different people on a lot of sides, and it's very easy to like send me a message or like have someone tell me something, and I feel like I'm just like hurt multiple times every day, and and honestly, maybe it's like a bit of a savior complex, but I just feel like I'm taking arrows in the back, hoping that they don't hit somebody else sometimes. And it's hard for me to be misunderstood. Like, I don't know what it looks like to people if I'm a pretty happy person, I'm optimistic, I'm positive, but like, it hurts to be misunderstood. And that can come in like the simplest of ways, like when I'm accused of something I don't believe, or when I've worked really hard to not make it appear like I am a certain way or I believe a certain thing, and then just out of like not knowing me, someone will just assume that based on my positionality, whether it's in a gay space or a religious space. And I just feel like it's so crazy to me that in the same day I can be accused of being like a malicious church puppet who's brainwashed, and also like a servant of Satan who's gonna rot in hell. I'm like, and I think that just like shows how difficult this space is. And I don't know, that's kind of sad, but yeah, I get hurt, and I just have to keep reminding myself that like people, like the anger is a secondary emotion to pain, and I try not to let that keep me from doing what I feel called to do, and being strategic about the way I present myself in a way that's going to build a bridge and not thrust me to either side, because I'm so sick of sides, like I can't do it anymore.
And there's a way to provide feedback that's appropriate. Like, if you say, Charlie, you're an idiot, or Charlie, you're bad, or Charlie, you're murdering people, like, that's not helpful. but if you say, hey, Charlie, I read these posts you put up about church leaders, and maybe you hadn't considered this. That's a way to provide feedback in a way that's constructive. And so, Charlie and I legitimately want to be better. And so if people can provide us feedback, we will be better. Like, we'll do our best. But we don't need to be attacked to be better.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Charlie. And I know this was a question for them, but I just want to say something. Ben and Charlie obviously have like the unhappy responsibility of having a lot of people on every side of the conversation have an issue with them at some point. And as like a member of this community, I wish that we would do a better job of giving grace to each other and do a better job of understanding where people are coming from. We know better than anyone else what it's like to be a minority and what minority stress does. And when that's further re-emphasized when your own community is criticizing you or rejecting you, again, there's nothing wrong with feedback. It really frustrates me. It hurts me as their friend, it hurts me as an individual. Not all 130 of these questions were the nicest questions. And I was cognizant of that, and I hated, and I still hate the fact that I haven't let Ben and Charlie see all these questions. I told them that I wasn't gonna let them see an anonymous form until I'd seen all of it. And it frustrates me that I had to do that in 2021 I had to do that because of a lot of people on every side of this conversation. So I would just invite you to consider how you might be further reinforcing a bad communication problem.
And just one thing I want to say, Sarah's been she's one of my closest friends, and she's been a very good shield for this event, like shielding us from the mean questions that were asked. I'm sure it's all stuff I've heard before. And it's really kind when people are shields, but I don't want anyone to put energy into trying to shield us from hard things. Like, we're going to be okay. We have each other. Put your energy into doing what you can in your sphere. And I think that as kind as it is to be a shield to us, probably just sharing your story, the stories of the people you love, might do better than putting your energy into shielding us.
Thank you. Thank you from a shield. This is a really good question, and you kind of answered it in one of your episodes, but I think that's a good one to point out again. If I suspect a friend might be LGBTQ+, but they haven't quite come to terms with it or come out to themselves, how can I establish myself as an ally/safe space so they feel comfortable coming out to me in the future? Is it ever appropriate to bring it up to them prior to them coming out to me?
So this is all about the Anne approach. And Anne is my sister. She's 3 years older than me. And I was trying to date like all the cougarettes when I was Cosmo. And because I was like...
Classic story.
Right. I was like, they must be the best. Like, I'll go after the cougarettes because, and so, but it like wasn't working. And I don't know, I was dating girls and I was like, boasting how great my dates were because I was like super overcompensating and trying to hide that I was gay / really trying to make something work with a girl. And I was talking to my sister and she was just like, something is totally off here. Like I'd been on like 11 dates with this girl and like hadn't held her hand or like touched her. And my sister was like, huh. But she didn't say anything about it. She just watched me for a while and was like, I think Charlie might be gay. So I'm gonna figure out the best way that a sister can support a gay brother, and I'm gonna show him that I'm safe until he's ready to tell me. And if he's not gay, then I'll be a better person. So that's what she did. And so she just started like researching and looking at blogs and stories and asking people about their experiences and became like a super powerful ally, and I had no idea. In the meantime, I'm super stressed. I feel like my family might reject me. I can't tell anyone. But Anne started doing the Anne approach, which was just like sending small organic messages to me to say that if I'm gay, I'm safe with her. And the most powerful one of those came as a text to me and my little brother, and my little brother is notoriously straight. Like, follow him on Instagram. He's like very attractive. He's everything I ever wanted to be, the straight basketball star from the high school. And like, he's just very not gay. And she included us both in a group text and like talked a lot. And part of that message was to say, look, if you're struggling with anything, if there's anything about you that you don't like, she listed a few things. And she's like, if you're gay or you feel attracted to your same sex at any level and you feel ashamed of that, please know that I love you and nothing changes and I want to help you. Now my little brother got that message and was like, cool, Anne, thanks, love you too. And I got that message and I was like, I'm safe. And I just think she was so tactful in the way she saw a potential situation and prepared herself for it, and did it in a way that didn't force me or pry it out of me or make me feel uncomfortable or like defensive, but she just offered herself as a safe channel of support where I could go if I needed it. And then I did, and she was my first family member I came out to and helped me a ton as I was dealing with some of the most difficult years of my life. So I would not ever really point blank ask someone if they're gay, but if you're concerned about their well-being, that's a great way to start.
Yeah, and I echo that. Like, I think it's generally the wrong choice to ask someone if they're gay or to ask about their orientation or gender identity. When I was living in Tucson, I'd been out for a couple of years to like close friends and some family members. And I was at a point where I like wanted to come out more, but it was still really scary. And I remember one night I was playing Mario Kart with some of my friends, and we were talking about LGBTQ issues in the church, and I was giving a lot of opinions, and I could tell this one guy thought I was gay. And honestly, I wish he had said, you know, Ben, I know a lot of people in the church experience same-sex attraction. Is that something you've been experiencing? Like, if he had said that, that would have been like such a weight off my shoulder. I'd been like, yes, I've been wanting to share this, and I haven't. But yet, if he had said, are you gay? I would have been like, no, that's not me. And so it's very difficult. It's very difficult because sometimes I think there are people who want to talk, and I think it would help them if we asked. But I think the default should be, let's not ask, let's wait till they're ready. But if for some reason the Spirit prompts you to ask someone a question, you know, ask for their consent. Is it okay if I ask you a really personal question? They say yes, you know, you can really soften it. You know, there are a lot of people who are gay in the church. Is that something you've been experiencing? But I think for the most part, it's not the right thing to ask. Wait for them to be ready.
Yeah, it also, what you said reminded me of something that our guest Eli McCann said, and I think it was like, how should I come out to my family? But he said, when someone comes out to you, it's not bad news. And I think that's such a beautiful thing to remember. Like, being authentically who you are and sharing that with another individual is so beautiful. There's like a communion and a connection there, and it's something to celebrate and be proud of. And in our culture, a lot of times someone is coming to the coming out moment with this scared, like, I'm going to be rejected, I'm going to be hurt, and I'm going to disappoint someone I love. But if you can just be like, just express love and make it a positive thing, like a celebratory moment that someone's willing to be themselves, that's super good too.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Charlie. So you've recorded a lot of episodes. I know you love all of them, and they were great. But is there an episode that was especially impactful for you? And if it was, why?
Yeah, honestly, I think the hinge point of, I get a little emotional thinking about this, was episode 37, is there a place for me in the church? Because that was not a question that we had planned on talking about. I just had this fairly triggering experience watching a TV show with my friend Heidi, and then I came home, and Charlie and I were roommates at the time, so I was talking to him about it, and then we talked to our roommate McKay about it, and then like the next night we just recorded that episode. And there were a lot of things that I felt like we needed to share. And after that, it kind of gave me like a different view of like what I wanted the podcast to be. And I don't know if any listeners like knows the difference after episode 37, is there a place for me in the church or not? But I felt a difference. I felt that it's been important for me to share more of the hard things, and to be more vulnerable that way. But really, we got more responses, like more emails about that episode than any other episode. People saying, I feel the same way. I want there to be a place. I'm fighting for that. And so that was a message I just felt like we were meant to share. And it was powerful and hard to share something that I felt like needed to be said.
I also felt a change after that episode, and I think on top of that, one of the most difficult things for me to start being more candid was that I didn't want to lose people's trust. I feel like I'm walking on a tightrope all the time, and I always have to be like watching to see how someone's going to react. And I really want to be a safe place for members of the church who are terrified of LGBTQIA plus people and the gay agenda and those issues. I want to be like a point of entry for them that they can feel safe and start getting the information that they desperately need so we can start making positive change in this sphere. But I'm so afraid and so conscious that like everything I say or do could potentially be scrutinized or under a microscope and push them away. And I think that experience just taught me that if I'm following the Spirit, if I need to talk about something or say something, that I just need to do it and trust God. Like it's not my job, but like obviously I'm going to be conscious of how I'm talking and presenting, but it's not my job to fully like make someone comfortable all the time if that means not talking about real things. And that episode kind of like led me into feeling more comfortable talking about dating, which is something that I was terrified to do because I had a book at Deseret Book and I just felt crushed by all like the pressures, and I was like, yeah,
Charlie and we knew we had to do a dating episode for a while, and Charlie just wasn't ready. And so I was waiting for Charlie to be ready, and finally one day you were like, I'm ready to do the episode.
Yeah, and it was because I was just like, you know what, like like I learned so much about myself and so much about God by dating, and I want to share like best practices that I learned the hard way after getting burned and hurt, and just in situations that no one else needs to be in now, because like I've learned things. I want to share that, and in case anybody else is looking for that in their lives or feels like that's a path that they should be going down. And I just think in a lot of ways that Is There a Place for Me in the Church episode inspired me to be more authentic about my experience and talk about more real issues that like, you know, like the juice, like things that everyone wants to know, but also like things that are scary to talk about because that's what a lot of people need. It's what I wish I would have had.
Just a couple more episodes that I really love, and thank you for sharing that, Charlie. The episode we did with Sarah, Should I Go on a Mission? Sarah kind of ended up interviewing us, which was fun. But then this happens in a number of podcasts. We'll be like close to finishing, and Charlie will be like, it's not done yet, like we're missing something. And at the end of that episode, Charlie shared a story that he hadn't planned on sharing that was just really beautiful and really lovely about God's love and God's care for him. And it was just so cool to see, like, we're talking about going on missions, and then this episode ended up being, like, this is how God is watching out for me. Like, he is in this detail of my experience. And I've seen that happen multiple times where we're planning on talking about one thing and then something else will happen. One of our episodes in season 2 ended up kind of being that way, where we ended up talking about how are we going to cheer for people around us? Like, how are we going to like celebrate who they are when that wasn't the question at all? And so it's really fun to see those episodes where that happens. 2 episodes I really loved because they weren't conversations that I had heard a lot, were the episode with Richard Bushman, who's a church patriarch, because I'd never heard a conversation about a patriarch talking about what it's like to give a patriarchal blessing. So that was amazing. I thought that was really neat. And also our episode on asexuality with Tirza, because that just I learned so much as we were doing that episode, and it was just so fun to like know that other people were going to be learning as well. So those were some fun episodes as well.
Thank you. So we're wrapping up, I know, guys, but we're going to have some time to talk to Ben and Charlie individually, and I hope you guys talk to each other too. But we're coming up on season 2. I know you've recorded some episodes. What are some of the hopes and aspirations that you have for season 2 and its impact?
I hope that season 2 can continue to grow, and that like we've been doing this long enough that people kind of trust it more and are willing to share and kind of step out of any comfort zone that might be inhibiting them from like really digging in. And also I really hope that season 2 inspires people to go back and listen to some of the other stuff we've done, because we've had like really spiritual, incredible, eye-opening moments that are captured. And I just like to think of it that, like, if you've ever had a conversation that's been so like riveting and inspiring and you wish you could like go back and rewind and look at some of the things, like that's what we've captured. And I feel humbled, like so humbled that somehow I've been the one that was able to help capture the essence of what it's like and the power of God's love and the hurt and just all of these convoluted, complex things that we're finding as we communicate with each other. So I hope that season 2 can continue to push the project forward, but also inspire people to go back and really like solidify their like allyship and their self-worth.
I'm excited to see how the Holy Ghost inspires the listeners to do more things. That's what I'm most excited about. There's this really cool project going on right now that happened because of episode 37. I probably shouldn't share details about it. Maybe, probably. But one of my friends was listening to the episode, and she was listening to it on her way to work, and then she had this idea, and then she finished the episode on the way home, and all day she's like, well, I can't do that. That's out of my sphere. Like, I can't do this. And then on the drive home, she listened to the rest of the episode, and I said, whatever you feel prompted to do that thing. And so she's like, I guess I got to do the thing. And now she's doing the thing, and it's such a cool thing. And so I don't know what things you guys are going to be inspired to do. I don't know. And I'm excited to see how God surprises all of us with the cool things that you guys do. Multiple people have reached out, since Charlie and I both speak Spanish, and have asked us to do episodes in Spanish. And I don't think we're going to do that. I don't think that's our job. But someone's going to listen, and it's going to be their stewardship to do that. And I'm excited to hear those episodes in Spanish and to subscribe to that podcast whenever it happens. I'm excited to see the ideas that you guys have and the way that you minister to one another. I'm excited to read your emails. Some of them are very long.
But he reads them.
But I do read them all. And sometimes people write me seriously, 10-page emails. And I just finish reading, I'm like, oh my gosh, that was a lot of someone's story. And I think I am so glad that they trusted me enough to share that much of themselves with me. And so my hope for season 2 is that people will keep feeling inspired to share their stories and to build Zion that way. And I hope that I don't have to be the receptacle for your story in the future, that the people that you actually know can be the receptacle for that. And I don't know how God's going to speak to you, and it might not be through our podcast. You might find it boring. I don't know. But I'm just excited to see how God works through all of us to move the work of the kingdom forward.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Charlie. We're wrapping up, and sometimes I know you sit there and you're just like, I wish I had an opportunity to say that thing about that other thing. Is there anything that either one of you would want to say before we wrap up today's panel? I'm shocked.
One of the heaviest things for me in my life has been trying to figure out if there's a place for me in heaven, in God's kingdom, and in the church where I am right now. And I moved to New York City after I had finished my undergrad at BYU, and I was in this ward that was just it was on the east side of Manhattan, and it was the most haphazard collection of individuals from all different places, all different socioeconomic backgrounds, and it was a place where God was, and you came as you were. And one of my really good friends there was dating this guy, and they were the cutest couple. They were awesome, and he wanted to bring his boyfriend to church. And we were talking about it in Central Park, and I was just like, this is never gonna work, dude. What is your goal here? We're not even sure if we can do this. Why are you gonna pull this stranger into this? And he's like, I don't know, but I feel like I should. So we had this whole conversation, and he started bringing his boyfriend to church. And there was a place for that same-sex couple in the church, in that congregation. There were no questions asked. People scooted down, and it was like, hey, you've never been here before? Let me show you how the hymn book works, and this is what to expect. And having them in our congregation made everyone there better. It fixed a lot of the hurtful things that are said. And it just, everyone was on their spiritual A game and was so accepting. And I watched that, and I was like, you know what? We are the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. We are the saints that make up the church. And there are so many ways that people don't know if they have a place. And communities, and congregations, and families, and we can be the agents for change that scoot down on the pew and send a text and support and cheer for people. And just watching my friend and his boyfriend have a place in the church blew my mind, and it gave me so much hope that whatever my life looks like, I can honor who I am and what I believe. And even if I'm going against social norms or anything, I can create the life I want to live. And I saw that because other people allowed it to happen. And I'm just so inspired that there's a room full of people who want to be like that, and that the people who never felt comfortable or or question whether they're worth it or whether they fit, like we can show them they belong. And I'm just overwhelmed with gratitude for that. So thank you all for coming.
I just have 2 thoughts to share. When I was 23 in the closet and just trying to figure out what to do, I read all these anonymous blogs by other gay members of the church. And one of them was by this guy, Mark. He later came out on his blog, like shared his name and his picture. It wasn't an anonymous blog. And his blog was one of my favorites, and it just helped me a ton. That's when I was 23. And then 7 years later, Jordan and I, the guy I dated, that had just ended. I went back to Arizona wondering how I was going to put the pieces of my life back together, and I was just not in a good place. And I got back to Arizona, and I decided that I wasn't going to hide anymore. Like, I was going to be honest about my orientation. And so I met this guy playing volleyball at the Institute, and we were standing out in the parking lot just talking. He was telling me all of his girl woes. And afterwards he said, "So how's your dating life?" And I said, "Well, not good because I'm gay." And he responded really well. And he said, "Actually, I've got a friend back in Florida where I was living, and I would love to set you guys up." And I was like, "No, thank you." And then he showed me his picture, and it was Mark. Like, it was this guy whose blog I had read. I was like, "Well, I don't want to date him, but I do want to meet him." And so
Mark, if you're out there.
and so we started texting, and he ended up being in Arizona for work, and he ended up spending a weekend with me in Tucson. And he was like only like the second or third person gay person I'd ever talked to about being gay. Like, I talked to straight people, but I just got to talk to him about my life, and it was just so good and healing for me. This is back when I was 30. Mark now listens to the podcast, and he texts me how much he loves it and says how great it is. And when the season ended, he was super bummed. He was like, "I need more episodes. Please start making them soon." And it was really cool that this person that helped me so much, now is being helped by what I was saying. Just seeing that full circle. And then in one of the episodes I mentioned that I pay for all of this. And he said, "Well, if you ever need any money, let me know. I'll pitch in some money." And so I was like, "Well, we're going to do this live event." And I told him, I asked him if he would pitch in like 20 or 50 bucks. And he asked me how much it was going to be, and I told him, and then he Venmoed me $1. and then he Venmoed me the rest of the money. This is sponsored by Mark. And,
Yay, Mark!
Mark will love those applause when he watches this. He's doing the Camino de Santiago in Spain right now. But I don't know how our lives are going to intertwine. I don't know. I don't know if 15 years from now we're going to run into each other at General Conference, or at the temple, or if you'll be in my neighborhood, or if I'll be renting a room in my house and you end up moving in. I don't know. I don't know how our lives are going to intertwine. Maybe we'll never meet. I don't know. But I know there's something to this. There's something to building community. And I'm just so grateful that you guys are part of the Questions from the Closet community. And this isn't something that even a year and a half ago I would have ever envisioned. And it's just really, really beautiful. And I know I said this before, but I want to say this again as my takeaway. I'm really excited to see how God's going to surprise us, and for the good things that are going to happen, and the way that our lives intertwine, and the way that you all do so much good in the world. Thank you for joining us today. If you've enjoyed if you've enjoyed our conversation, please consider listening to our weekly podcast and following us on Instagram or Facebook at Questions from the Closet. Please remember that we do not represent the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints or Brigham Young University. We're not trying to be prescriptive or tell anyone what to think or what to do.
As always, we encourage you to listen to other voices and hear a wide variety of experiences. If you would like to submit a question or share a comment about our podcast, you can email Ben at questionsfromthecloset@gmail.com. Thank you.
Yay!